A cleaner's routine walk turns into a life-changing moment when a cruel splash of mud sparks an unseen watcher's plan, setting off a thrilling journey of redemption and hope. Welcome to Life Bond Tales. Like and share the story. It encourages us to create more heartwarming stories. The city stirred under a heavy grey sky, the air thick with the damp chill of last night's rain, as Sarah Thompson hurried along a cracked sidewalk towards Sterling Heights Hotel. At 23, her slender frame bore the weight of a life shaped by loss and duty, her faded blue cleaning uniform clinging to her body, its once sharp creases softened by years of wear. Her shoes, scuffed and greying, squeaked faintly with each determined step, the soles thin enough to feel every pebble beneath. Over her shoulder hung a small canvas bag, its frayed straps digging into her skin, holding her only possessions for the day: a bruised apple, a single slice of bread wrapped in cling film, and a pair of worn cleaning gloves, their edges unraveling like the edges of her patience. Sarah's thoughts were tethered to her 12-year-old brother, Liam, left behind in their one-room apartment, his schoolbook stacked precariously on a wobbly table, a relic from their parents, who had been taken by a car accident 3 years prior. That table, scratched and unsteady, was a silent reminder of the life they'd lost. And Sarah's job at the hotel was the thread holding their fragile world together. Liam's dinners, his school fees, the faint hope of a future where he wouldn't have to carry the same burdens she did. The morning was biting, her breath puffing out in small clouds as she navigated the narrow streets, her dark hair pulled into a tight bun that swayed with her brisk pace. She kept her eyes down, avoiding the slick puddles that dotted the pavement, her mind rehearsing the day's tasks: mop the lobby, polish the brass, scrub the guest bathrooms, all before the breakfast rush at Sterling Heights. The city's wealthier district loomed ahead, its glass towers catching the dull light, their reflections a stark contrast to the crumbling brick buildings of her own neighborhood. She was nearly at the main intersection, where the roar of morning. Traffic grew louder when a deep rumble snapped her from her thoughts. A sleek black SUV barreled down the street, its polished surface gleaming like a predator's hide, its tires slicing through a deep puddle swollen from the night's downpour. Sarah had no time to react. A wave of muddy water crashed over her, soaking her from head to toe, the cold shock stealing her breath. Her uniform was now a patchwork of brown stains, her face streaked with grit, her bag dripping as it hung limply from her shoulder. The icy water seeped into her bones, the mud clinging like a second skin, heavy with humiliation. The SUV slowed just enough for the tinted window to slide down, revealing Claire Winston, a woman in her mid-30s, her blonde hair swept into a flawless chignon, her red lipstick sharp against her pale, angular face. She laughed, a high-pitched cutting sound that pierced the morning's quiet, her eyes glinting with amusement behind oversized sunglasses. "Stay out of the way, darling," she called, her voice dripping with condescension, before the window rolled up and the SUV roared off, leaving Sarah frozen on the sidewalk. Her lips trembled, her hands clenched the sodden bag, her knuckles whitening as she fought the sting in her eyes. The laughter echoed in her head, sharp and cruel, but tears didn't come, not yet. She wiped her face with a muddy sleeve, smearing the dirt further, and took a shaky breath, her heart pounding with a mix of shame and defiance. She whispered to herself, "For Liam," and forced her feet to move, her shoes squelching with every step, the weight of the morning pressing harder against her chest. Across the street, a silver sedan idled unnoticed, its driver, Michael Carter, a tech mogul in his late 20s, watching the scene unfold with a quiet intensity. His green eyes narrowed as he took in every detail: the splash, Claire's mocking laugh, Sarah's rigid posture as she refused to crumble. Michael, who had built a fortune from nothing, preferred the shadows to the spotlight, his plain jacket and unassuming demeanor belying his wealth and influence. He recognized Claire instantly, a celebrated interior designer whose charm masked a careless arrogance, her name synonymous with high society and shallow generosity. But it was Sarah who held his attention, her quiet dignity in the face of cruelty, stirring something deep within him, a memory of his mother, a seamstress who had faced her own share of dismissals with the same unyielding grace. His fingers tightened on the steering wheel, a spark of resolve igniting in his chest. He pulled out his phone, his voice low and measured as he spoke to his assistant. "Find out who that girl is. I need her name, her story, everything." Sarah reached Sterling Heights, her reflection in the towering glass doors, a muddy ghost of the woman who had left home an hour ago, her face streaked like a warrior's, but her eyes heavy with exhaustion. She slipped through the service entrance, hoping to avoid notice, but the damp trail she left on the concrete betrayed her. A guest in a tailored suit glanced her way, his eyes skimming over her as if she were a smudge on the pristine lobby floor, then turned back to his phone. Sarah's chest tightened, the familiar ache of being invisible cutting deeper than the cold. She thought of Liam's hopeful grin, the way he'd hugged her that morning and said, "You're the best, Emmy," his nickname for her, a lifeline in moments like this. She straightened her shoulders, her jaw set, and headed to the locker room, her steps slow but deliberate. The hallway smelled of bleach and damp stone, the fluorescent lights flickering overhead as she pushed open the door, her heart whispering, a promise to keep going, to carry the weight for both of them, no matter how heavy the day became. Sarah slipped into the locker room of Sterling Heights Hotel, the faint hum of fluorescent lights buzzing above. As she set her dripping bag on a bench, her muddy uniform leaving faint streaks on the cold tiles. The air was thick with the scent of industrial cleaner, a sharp contrast to the opulent lobby she'd soon be scrubbing, and her hands shook slightly as she peeled off the soaked fabric, each movement heavy with the morning's humiliation. Claire's cruel laugh lingered in her mind, a jagged edge that cut deeper with every replay, but Sarah pushed it aside, focusing on Liam, picturing his small frame hunched over a math worksheet in their cramped apartment, his trust in her a quiet anchor. She changed into a spare uniform from the supply closet, the stiff fabric scratching her skin, and caught her reflection in a cracked mirror, her face pale, her eyes rimmed with exhaustion, but burning with resolve. "Mrs. Evans." The supervisor burst through the door, her lips pursed as she took in Sarah's disheveled state. "You're late and you look like you crawled out of a ditch," she snapped, her voice cutting through the quiet. Sarah tried to explain the SUV, the puddle, but Mrs. Evans raised a hand. "Save it. Get to work. The lobby needs to be flawless before the morning rush." Sarah nodded, her throat tight, and grabbed her mop and bucket, the familiar weight grounding her as she headed to the grand lobby, its marble floors gleaming under chandeliers that mocked her stained appearance. Guests swept past, their expensive coats brushing the air, their eyes sliding over her as if she were part of the furniture, and Sarah felt the sting of their indifference, her hands tightening around the mop handle as she worked, each stroke a silent vow to keep going for Liam. Across town, Michael Carter sat in his sleek office, the city's skyline stretching beyond his glass walls, a world he'd conquered through code and quiet ambition. At 28, he was a billionaire who shunned the spotlight, his plain sweater and unassuming posture hiding the power he wielded. His assistant, Lena, slid a folder across his desk, her voice clipped. Sarah Thompson, 23, sole guardian to her brother. Liam, 12, lives in a rent-controlled unit on the city's edge. 2 cleaning jobs, no family since her parents' accident 3 years ago. Michael opened the folder, his gaze lingering on a photo of Sarah at a school event, her arm around Liam, her smile soft but tired. The image stirred memories of his own mother, counting coins for rent, her hands rough from years of labor, yet never losing her warmth. He tapped the photo, his voice low. "She's carrying the world and still standing." Lena raised an eyebrow, waiting, but Michael's mind was already racing, a plan forming to lift Sarah without her knowing. Meanwhile, Claire Winston stood in her penthouse, adjusting a silk scarf in a gilded mirror, her phone glowing with likes on her latest post, a curated shot of her sipping coffee at a high-end cafe. Her assistant, Mia, hovered nearby, organizing her schedule, but Claire barely noticed, her thoughts flitting to the morning's incident, dismissing it as a trivial annoyance. To her, people like Sarah were background noise, irrelevant to her world of galas and brand deals. She laughed off, a message about a delayed shipment, her confidence unshaken, unaware that her actions had left a mark on someone who didn't forget. Back at the hotel, Sarah took her break behind the loading dock, sitting on a crate with her uneaten lunch. A soggy apple now bruised beyond saving. A stray cat, its fur matted, slunk past, and Sarah broke off a piece of her bread, tossing it, gently, watching the cat nibble with cautious trust. The small act warmed her, a flicker of light in a day heavy with shadows. From the delivery entrance, Michael watched, dressed in a plain jacket, his phone in hand as a pretense, his heart tightening at Sarah's quiet generosity. She gave what little she had, a strength he recognized, a strength he'd once seen in his mother's tired smiles. He turned away, slipping back into the city's pulse, but his resolve hardened. He would change her story, one careful step at a time. Sarah dragged her mop across the penthouse floor of Sterling Heights Hotel, the soft scent of lavender polish mingling with the crisp air drifting through an open window, her new assignment a stark contrast to the chaotic lobby below. Her promotion to the elite suites, announced abruptly via a memo pinned to the staff board, came with a raise that meant Liam could join his school's science club, a small victory that lightened her steps despite the whispers trailing her. Co-workers, muttering about favoritism, their eyes sharp with suspicion. At the end of her shift, she opened her locker to find an unexpected paper bag tucked inside, its presence a quiet mystery in the dimly lit room. Her heart quickened as she peered inside, finding a pair of soft, new cleaning gloves, a warm turkey sandwich wrapped in foil, and a folded note in neat cursive. For someone who carries on with courage. Sarah's breath hitched, the words piercing. The armor she'd worn all day, her fingers tracing the note as if it might vanish. She sat on a bench, the locker room silent save for the distant hum of a vacuum, and unwrapped the sandwich, its warmth spreading through her hands. The first hot meal she'd tasted in weeks. Biting into it, she closed her eyes, a flicker of gratitude warming her chest, though she glanced around half expecting someone to claim the gift, but the room remained empty. Across the city, Michael Carter leaned back in his office chair, the glow of his computer screen casting shadows across his face as he watched Sarah through the hotel's security feed, a privilege of his investment in the chain. Her small smile, the way she savored each bite, stirred a quiet satisfaction in him, a confirmation of the strength he'd seen in her. His assistant, Lena, stood nearby, arms crossed, her voice dry. "You're going all in for a stranger." Michael's gaze didn't shift, his tone steady. "She's not a stranger, she's someone who doesn't break." He'd already made a call to the hotel's regional manager, his instructions clear. Move Sarah Thompson to the penthouse suites, better pay, less strain, keep it discreet. Lena shook her head, but didn't argue, sensing the resolve in his voice. Her resolve tied to memories of his mother's own unyielding spirit. Meanwhile, Claire Winston lounged in her penthouse, her manicured nails tapping a crystal glass as she scrolled through her phone, basking in the glow of a new design feature in a glossy magazine. Her assistant, Mia, sorted through emails, but Claire's attention snagged on an anonymous message in her inbox, a grainy photo of her SUV splashing Sarah, a sticky note attached, "Actions have echoes." Her lips tightened, a flash of irritation crossing her face as she deleted the message, dismissing it as a prank, though a faint unease settled in her chest, like a crack in her perfect world. She waved Mia away, her voice sharp, and returned to her mirror, adjusting a diamond earring, convincing herself the incident was beneath her notice. Back at the hotel, Sarah slipped the gloves and note into her bag, her heart lighter as she walked home under the city's flickering streetlights. At their apartment, Liam greeted her with a grin, his science club permission slip clutched in his hand, his excitement filling the small space. Over a dinner of reheated noodles, she told him about the mysterious gift, her voice soft with wonder, and Liam's eyes sparkled. "Maybe it's a secret admirer, Emmy," he teased, his laughter a balm to her weary soul. The next morning, Sarah arrived at work to find her name on the penthouse roster, the raise enough to cover Liam's club fees and a new pair of shoes for him. She stood still, the memo crinkling in her hand, as a co-worker muttered, "Some people get all the luck." Sarah smiled faintly, unsure who to thank but feeling a shift, a whisper of possibility in a life that had long felt like a treadmill. In his office, Michael closed the security feed, a rare warmth in his chest as he thought of Sarah's quiet resilience, knowing this was only the first step in rewriting her story. Sarah moved through the penthouse suites of Sterling Heights, hotel with a quiet grace, her hands deftly arranging fresh towels and polishing glass tabletops until they sparkled under the soft glow of designer lamps. The plush carpets and sweeping views of the city skyline felt like a different world, but the weight of her co-workers' stares followed her, their hushed speculations about her sudden promotion to the elite floor cutting sharper than any knife. Rachel, a veteran cleaner with a perpetually sour expression, led the whispers, her voice low as she told others Sarah must have pulled strings, her tone dripping with resentment. Sarah overheard, but kept her focus, her thoughts drifting to Liam's latest school project, a model rocket he was building with classmates, his excitement a beacon that kept her grounded. During a break, she checked her phone, smiling at a photo Liam sent of his half-finished rocket, but her peace was shattered when Rachel brushed past her in the supply closet, knocking over a bottle of polish that spilled across the floor. Later that afternoon, a guest complained of a sticky film on a coffee table in Sarah's section, and Mrs. Evans summoned her to the office, her voice cold. "This is unacceptable, Sarah. You're on thin ice." Sarah's stomach twisted, her protests. That she'd used the correct cleaner falling on deaf ears, until Michael Carter, monitoring through his discreet access to the hotel's security cameras, requested a review of the footage. The grainy video revealed Rachel swapping the polish for a sticky solution, a deliberate act of sabotage. Rachel was suspended for a week, and Sarah was cleared, but the incident left her shaken, the locker room now a minefield of sidelong glances and icy silences. Across town, Claire Winston sat in her sleek office, surrounded by fabric swatches and sketches for her next big project, her phone buzzing with notifications from admirers. But the anonymous photo of her SUV splashing Sarah haunted her. Its caption, "Actions have echoes," now shared across social media, sparking comments that questioned her polished persona. She snapped at Mia to find the source, her usual poise, fraying as she sensed her control slipping. On impulse, she drove to the hotel, spotting Sarah at the bus stop after her shift, her posture straight, despite the weight of her bag. Claire slowed her car, her voice sharp through the open window. "You're stirring up trouble, cleaner. Think you're clever with this online nonsense." Sarah's eyes met hers, calm but unwavering. "I haven't done anything. I just want to do my job." Claire scoffed, speeding off, but her hands trembled on the wheel, her confidence rattled by Sarah's quiet defiance. At the hotel, Michael decided it was time to meet Sarah face to face. Dressed in a simple blazer, his billionaire status concealed, he approached her in a penthouse lounge as she dusted a chandelier. "Excuse me," he said, his tone warm. "Can you direct me to the rooftop garden?" Sarah smiled, polite but guarded, and led him to the elevator, her hands clasped tightly. As they walked, he asked about her work, her aspirations, and she hesitated before admitting her dream of studying business management to one day run a small inn. "It's a long shot," she said softly. "My brother needs me now." Michael nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "You're already building something special. Keep going." Sarah blushed, his words settling like a warm blanket, though she wondered why this stranger's kindness felt so profound. That night, she tucked Liam into bed, his chatter about his rocket filling their small apartment with life, and she replayed Michael's words, a spark of hope igniting. Michael, in his modest apartment, sat with a photo of his mother, a woman, who'd worked tirelessly to raise him, her dreams deferred for his future. Sarah's ambition echoed that sacrifice, and he felt a connection he couldn't ignore, a pull to help her rise without overshadowing her strength. Sarah glided through the penthouse suites, her hands steady as she adjusted a vase of white roses, the morning light casting soft patterns across the polished wood floors. The scholarship offer came during a quiet moment in the hotel cafe. Michael, sliding a sleek folder across the table, his eyes earnest as he explained, it was a full ride to a business management program, tailored for evening classes so she could keep her part-time job. Sarah's heart raced, her fingers trembling. As she opened the folder, the words blurring through unshed tears. "Why me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Michael leaned forward, his tone unwavering. "Because you work harder than anyone and ask for nothing, you deserve this." She accepted her gratitude, spilling out in a soft thank you, her mind already racing with possibilities for Liam's future. That evening she shared the news with her brother, his eyes wide as he hugged her, shouting, "You're going to be a boss, Emmy." At work, her attention to detail earned quiet nods from guests, some slipping her tips with smiles, a new respect that fueled her confidence. She dove into her studies at night, her small apartment lit by a single lamp, as she scribbled notes on guest experience strategies, her dreams no longer distant. But the rumors persisted, a spiteful blog post surfacing online claiming she was chasing Michael's wealth, a gold digger in a cleaner's uniform. The words stung Sarah's chest, tightening as she read them during a break, her co-workers' glances turning cold again. Across the city, Claire's world unraveled the viral photo of her SUV splashing. Sarah now linked to her name in scathing comments that eroded her brand. She stormed into her father's office, her voice sharp as she demanded. He shut down the backlash. He set his pen down, his gaze stern. "You brought this on yourself, Claire. Learn from it." He froze her accounts, her lavish lifestyle crumbling as sponsors pulled away, leaving her to face the consequences alone. Desperate, she confronted Sarah outside the hotel one evening, her coat flapping in the chill wind. "You think you've won?" Playing the victim, she hissed. Sarah stood tall, her voice calm. "I never wanted your world, I just want mine." Claire faltered, her usual bravado cracking, as she drove away her reflection in the rearview mirror, a stranger. Michael acted decisively, calling a press conference in the hotel's ballroom, his voice steady as cameras flashed. "Sarah Thompson is the most honest person I've met. Her strength is an inspiration, and those spreading lies should question their own hearts." The crowd applauded the clip trending online, shifting public sentiment to admiration for Sarah's resilience. She watched. From her apartment, her hand covering her mouth, stunned by his public defense. At her next class, her professor praised her sharp analysis, pulling her aside to suggest presenting her ideas to the hotel's management, a chance to shape real change. Sarah walked home under the city's glowing lights, her steps lighter. Her notebook clutched tight, filled with sketches for a future inn. Claire sat alone in her darkened penthouse, her phone screen illuminating a face stripped of its usual polish, the weight of her actions settling in, not as a scandal, but as a truth she couldn't ignore. Michael visited Sarah at work, finding her in the penthouse lounge arranging a tray of glassware. He smiled, his voice gentle. "You're changing things, Sarah, not just for you, but for everyone who sees you." She looked up, her heart swelling with a mix of gratitude and something deeper, a warmth she felt but didn't name. That night she studied by candlelight. Liam asleep nearby, her dreams no longer tethered to survival, but soaring toward a future she could almost touch. Sarah stepped into the grand ballroom of Sterling Heights Hotel, the chandeliers casting a warm glow over her simple emerald dress, its soft fabric swaying as she moved through the crowd at the hotel's 20th anniversary gala. The room hummed with the clink of glasses and the murmur of the city's elite. But when the director called her to the stage, a hush fell. He presented her with a plaque, her name etched beside words like resilience and inspiration, her journey. From cleaner to management trainee, now a quiet beacon for the staff. Sarah took a deep breath, her voice clear, as she addressed the room a year ago. "I walked these halls invisible. My hands calloused, my heart heavy with worry. For my brother Liam. But one act of cruelty and one act of kindness changed everything." Her eyes found Michael in the crowd, his steady gaze grounding her as she continued. "I'm here because I kept going, because someone believed in me, and because kindness speaks louder than status." The applause was thunderous, even those who once whispered now clapping with genuine warmth. Claire slipped into the gala, uninvited, her once flawless poise softened by a plain coat, her eyes hesitant as she approached Sarah after the speech. "I was wrong," she said, her voice low. "I'm sorry." Sarah met her gaze, her response steady. "I forgive you, but respect is earned." Claire nodded, stepping back, her father's words ringing in her ears. "You've got growing to do." Later, Sarah and Michael stood on the rooftop garden, the city lights twinkling below like a sea of stars. He handed her a cup of chamomile tea, his voice soft. "You were incredible tonight." Sarah smiled, her fingers brushing the plaque. "It feels like a dream." Michael stepped closer, his eyes warm. "I've loved you since I saw your strength that first day." Sarah's heart raced, her voice a whisper. I love you too. They stood in silence, their hands touching, the moment complete without words. The next evening, Sarah hosted a small dinner in her new apartment, a cozy space funded by her promotion. Liam's laughter filling the room as he set out plates for pasta. Michael joined them, his sleeves rolled up as he tossed a salad, his ease, with Liam warming Sarah's soul. After dinner, they walked to the street where Claire's SUV had once splashed her the pavement, now smooth and clean. Sarah slipped off her shoes, stepping barefoot onto the road. I'm leaving that day behind, she said. Michael joined her barefoot, his presence a promise of partnership. They walked forward, their laughter soft under the streetlights. Sarah's story spread a local blog, calling her journey from mud to merit a viral inspiration, flooding her inbox with messages of support. She excelled in her classes, her professors mentoring her on a business plan for a community inn, her dream taking shape. Michael supported her with quiet visits, a shared coffee, a gentle touch that spoke of a shared future. Claire began volunteering at a community center, her father's restrictions forcing her to see beyond her old world, her heart slowly opening. At home, Sarah sat by the window, Liam asleep, her notebook open to a sketch of her inn, its doors wide for others like her. Michael joined her, his hand on hers. You're building more than a business, you're building hope. Sarah smiled, her eyes bright with purpose and love. You showed me I could. They looked out at the city together, not just lovers, but proof that kindness and resilience can bloom where mud once fell their steps forward, a quiet testament to a new beginning.